Welcome, everyone, to today's Dauntless Leadership Podcast. Please don't forget to download us on your favorite platform, watch us on YouTube, tell your friends about us, and importantly, comment. I love to see your comments. Today starts a series of podcasts focused on some of the most courageous women I know. People who are breast cancer survivors or cancer survivors and have used their experience to build resources for other women and other people in their cancer journeys. And we will have several folks talking with us between now and throughout the month of October, maybe even into November on this topic. They are truly some of the most courageous people I know, and I'm pleased to welcome today my friend and trusted advisor, Wendy Van Besien. She's a leadership coach, facilitator, and reinvention guide who helps high-achieving women realign with their truth, reclaim their voices and presence, and most importantly, purpose. A graduate of Cornell University and Columbia Business School, she built her career at Fortune 100 companies, including Ford Motor Company and Johnson & Johnson, where we worked together. And actually, Wendy got the job I wanted before I got it at Johnson & Johnson Consumer. And then she pivoted into coaching and consulting. And I've had the privilege of working with her in both of those capacities as well. Her journey through 3 cancer diagnoses awakened her to the power of emotional clarity, self-trust, and truth-telling. Lessons she now weaves into her work with individuals and high-performing teams. She's certified in emotional intelligence, Hogan, Influence Without Authority, and DISC, and one of the inaugural coaches at the World Happiness Summit. Wendy blends neuroscience, positive psychology, and lived wisdom to help others lead with authenticity, compassion, and courage. Welcome, Wendy.
Lisa, it's so great to be here with you. We have spent a lot of our lives together, both professionally and personally, and I couldn't be more thrilled.
Well, me too. And you talk about the Happiness Summit. And what I didn't say in your introduction is I truly look forward to every opportunity I have to talk to you. You make me happy no matter what's going on in your life. You make people happy. And one of the things that I want to talk about today is how do you find that positive energy? Especially there are times, you could argue now might be a time in the world where it's challenging to dig down and find that. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But first, I want to start with the question I start all my podcasts with, which is, what does dauntless mean to you?
You know, it was so interesting. I had a sense that that question was going to come. And so I really had thought about that. And I'll answer it in a going into a direction of I think dauntless is almost the opposite of what fear is. And fear is the inability to move forward because of something that you perceive isn't going to go well. It's that perception. And I think dauntless is the acceleration of courage. Courage isn't that you're not going to move forward, it's just your ability to take one step. And then dauntless takes it even one step further. And so I think it's really leading from a place of positivity, of the ability to know that you don't know what's going to happen. It's uncertain, but recognizing that your skills are going to be able to get you where you need to be.
Wendy, can you talk about your journey? What are you doing today? And then maybe back into how did you get there?
Sure. So, Lisa, as you know, we've worked together for the last 20 years, both in marketing and coaching. And I am now studying human design, which really is a science of differentiation. It's the self-discovery system that individuals and executives can use to really help identify their strengths as well as their blind spots. And so I really feel it's a unique differentiator for leaders and their teams because it's going to help to be able to put people together that have different kinds of strengths and also then identify what the opportunities for the teams are.
It sounds very exciting. I know in the past, when we've worked to put together high performing teams, we've used tools like Strength Finders and other DISC, for instance. How is this different, better, and how are you using it in your practice?
Well, that's a great question. It is really different than the others because at the others, the self-assessment is taken and you're using your mind. Here, the input is different. And what it really does is you are unique. The quantum physics part of this allows you to see the different gates, the different centers that each individual are. It's all unique. It really is this science of differentiation, which is why I really love it, because the individual needs to do some self-discovery, and in that self-discovery can recognize how they want to lead into their strengths versus strength finders, which tells you, which may or may not be true.
Yeah, I like that it's the science of self-discovery. And I feel like for me personally, we'll probably talk about this because we're always ever changing and evolving. And so I'd like to focus not just on what I did in the past and where I was strong in the past, but what can I be? What can I do? So do you use this for teams or just for individuals?
Right now, I'm using it just for individuals, and what I am mapping out is how to use it with teams. And there is going to be there will be a time. I'm just trying to figure it out. I'm in that early stage myself. As we continually evolve as individuals, I'm continuing to evolve now as a coach and leader.
Well, I talk to and mentor a lot of young people. I know you do as well. And those who are listening know how tough this job market is and how important it is to differentiate yourself. And so to me, that's a great output, a great outcome of this kind of coaching. Without differentiation, I don't think you can get a job, and certainly not in a tough market. Do you
I think
agree?
you're right. I totally agree with that. And I do think it's a very difficult job market right now. I think corporations are cutting budgets, and the uncertainty out there is making it more challenged. Are they going to spend money on learning and development, which is something, basically I'm doing right now.
Right about here is where our listeners could be hearing your sponsorship message. Consider sponsoring Dauntless Leadership to reach our wonderful, motivated, talented listeners who are thinking about upping their leadership game in all walks of life. Reach them, if you like, by letting me know at lisa@lisa-kent.com. We'd love to have you. One of the things I mentioned up front is that to me, you have such positive energy. I never hesitate to bring you with me into even the most down in the mouth group, even the most challenging business situation. How is it that you're able to maintain that positive energy? And can you, if you're comfortable, talk about your cancer journey? Because I think the work that you've done coaching survivors is pretty impressive.
Thanks, Lisa. It's so interesting. I'll go back because now that I've just studied human design, we all have a predisposition to whatever our energy levels are, or our frequencies that we run at. And I like to think about it this way. When you meet someone, you just want to be around them, and they might have a Tigger energy, like from like Winnie the Pooh, and then you're around someone, and they're just, oh no, everything happens to me. That's like an ER energy. So,
Yeah.
I- from my training and the science behind it, we each have our own basic, like we have our foundation, and we have the ability to increase that. We just have to do it through our own mindset. And as you know, I teach a lot of mindset work. And so, when I go back to the cancer, listen, not every day is great, right? Let's be real. And I certainly don't ascribe to woo woo.
Mhm.
What I do ascribe to is, if we're going to languish, Adam Grant talks about languishing, then
Mhm.
let us languish. Be in that liminal space and think about that. And then at some point, It's about flipping the switch and how are you going to rise? What does it mean to rise? Because no one is going to get you out of whatever hole. You have to get yourself out of that. And so when I think about my own energy and when I think about my own cancer journey, I'll share a very poignant story. I remember I lost my hair. I just lost my hair. And I went into the bathtub with a glass of wine. And the little, like Jess, who must have been 8 at the time, like came in and she goes, "Oh, that looks like fun. Can I come in?" I'm like, "Sure." And then Lexi, who was 6 at the time, came in and she goes, "Yeah, I want to come in too." And then we started splashing and we did that. And what I realized then is that once you're a mom, you're always a mom. Like, regardless of what I look like, I was still going to be that mom. And so I felt like the question was not why me, it's about how am I going to deal with that? And so my coaching that morphed from all these experiences was your character is not defined by what happens to you, but how you respond. And I've tried to help clients with that as well.
Your character is not defined by what happens to you, but how you respond. To me, really resonates. You know, I've had my own diagnosis with multiple sclerosis, which I try to be mindful of, but not let it bring me down. And, you know, as I said, just so impressed by all the cancer survivors in my life and how they have chosen to move on. So I think what you're saying is you don't have to stay in Eeyore. You might have some Eeyore moments,
Yes.
but then you need to decide you're going to rise above it, build that energy, and be the person people want to be around. And I think that's really critical for being a leader. Nobody wants to. My book is called How to Be the Leader Everyone Wants to Follow in
Right.
Leveraging Leadership. And I think if people don't want to be around you and don't want to follow you, it doesn't matter what your
Right. No
style
one's going
is.
to go.
Yes. So what are some of the steps? And we're talking to an audience of emerging leaders predominantly here, although there are a lot of women who listen who are like me at a pivot point in
Yeah.
their lives or careers. What kind of steps, what kind of things should people be thinking about as they are building their suite of leadership skills? What's important?
Well, I think there are a couple things that I think are important. The first is to kind of like really identify through self-identification, what are you good at and what do you want to do? Because many times any road's going to take any of us where we want to go, but I think it's really having a now goal, Lisa. What is your now goal? And it should be a stretch goal. It's not a strategic plan, it's what your now goal is. And then that strategic plan under that gets you to your now goal. And if we don't have the answers, which many of us don't, then the opportunity is who can you talk to try to get that? What steps are you taking? Because action will get action. If you just stay stuck, you're just going to stay stuck. So it's about identifying the idea that we're morphing. And what I'm finding is, especially women mid-career, midlife, whatever that is, you can be at a crossroads. Perhaps you're high achieving. You may not feel like you're enough. There might be a little bit of imposter syndrome. How do you shed that? How do you get off of that and then identify what it is you want to do and then how to move forward?
You know, before we called it imposter syndrome, I had it. I just didn't know what to call it. I suddenly was thrust into this role of CEO of a .com, you
Right.
know,
I remember
Rosa.
that.
And the CEO had left, and they appointed me reluctantly because my board of directors were European men who didn't necessarily want a woman running the show. And it was the day before our Christmas party, and I had to show up to the holiday event, and make a speech as their new president in a time, you know, this was during the .com bust, in a
Mhm.
time when it was very scary to
Right.
be in the internet world and when everyone knew our cash was depleting. And before I went up on the stage, I went in the ladies' restroom and I called my dad and I said, Dad, I can't believe I'm in this situation. I'm the CEO of this
Right.
company and I have to go make a speech. And I wrote a speech, but it doesn't feel like what they need to hear. They need to hear, and this, I think, you would echo positivism, optimism, realism,
Realism.
pragmatism, but also that we're gonna get beyond it. And that song, "This is not my beautiful life. This is not
Yeah.
my," right?
David Burns, right? I
Yes,
think
right.
David Burns.
It was echoing in my head, and my father said, "Don't write that speech. Go out there and speak from the heart,
Mm,
and you'll be fine." And
wise man.
so, yeah, I did, and we were fine. And the company had some very challenging months, but we ended up selling to Wakefern ShopRite, and I learned that I can't hang around the holiday party for the whole time because people really don't feel themselves if the CEO is there the whole time. So I had to
You had to
skedaddle.
believe.
Um,
Right,
but we didn't know it was called imposter syndrome. I
right.
just knew I felt totally out of my own league. So how do you get past that? I mean,
Yeah,
everybody can't call Bill Barnett my dad, who
right.
sadly is not around anymore.
Yeah. So imposter syndrome, the way, and I've actually coached, first of all, I've had imposter syndrome. I probably still have imposter syndrome because it's not like you have it or you don't have it. It can be situational, right? So the opportunity
Right.
is like you felt it as you were going in to do this speech. And how could you not? You were just, given the position the day before. Very understandable. What I am finding with leaders and just individuals is to be able to understand like what the situation is. It situational? Then to identify what's real and what's not real. Like what
Hmm.
are the limiting beliefs that you're bringing in? And why are those limiting beliefs there? That usually gets back at, and not a therapist, not a psychologist, but it gets back at to what your origin story is. What are the labels that perhaps you've had in your family? What labels are you still ascribing to yourself that can be let go? And then also finding out where you're comfortable. Sometimes we feel like we're an imposter if we perceive we don't know enough, we don't have the vocabulary, may or may not be true. But it's about taking that one step forward and just trying it out. There's this idea of fake it till you make it. I don't,
Hmm.
I don't particularly like that because you're faking it. So it's not authentic, but you can act it, right? Like actors get up on stage all the time. So try a different hat on and see if that works. And so that's how I help clients and myself. That's how I do the self-talk of, all right, Wendy, what do you need to do to move forward?
I like fake it till you make it because it rhymes, but
Yeah,
you're right. It's really not faking it. It's finding within yourself something that will help you get over the hump.
yep.
And I one of the things in that instance where I felt like, what am I doing in this role? I realized it was okay to say when I did not know, right? I thought the CEO, the president should always know,
Mhm.
and I couldn't possibly deliver that. So when I realized it was okay to say, I don't know, but I
Yeah,
will figure it out, or we will figure it out, that was a lot more acceptable for them to hear. And I felt better being honest about the fact that I didn't know. I didn't know how we were going to raise another $1 million. I
right.
didn't know how we were going to sell the company. Who knew what was going to happen with the stock market? We surely couldn't go public, which was
No.
the original plan. So I think that's important too, to admit that you may not know everything, but that you have maybe the resources to figure it out.
Yeah. And Lisa, what I think you're really talking about there is vulnerability, right? You were able to be vulnerable with your team and say, I don't have the answers. And I think the greatest leaders now are vulnerable because it's hard to have all the answers. And if you just have the answers, then you're not really aligning your team. We talk about high performing teams. It's about allowing them to have a voice in whatever the major decisions are. And by doing that, you also bring them along, and they are then really accountable to also the success. And that's when everyone has a little bit of skin in the game and a success, that's when you really get forward momentum.
And I've seen you build from not formed teams to really well-formed, high-performing teams out of groups of people that come from all walks of life. And I think it's always important, but I think it's particularly important now when there is so much uncertainty and ambiguity. And I've been reading a lot of articles about leaders who say, we got to get everybody in the office because we have to be together to kind of storm and form these strategies. Now, I don't know if that's true, but I do know that that's a way to help people have skin in the game, to
Yes.
feel like they're part of the solution, not just the problem. Do you have a point of view on that?
I do have a point of view, and it may not be the most popular point of view, but from my from my wisdom perspective here, I do think bringing people in the office is the way to go. I think there's an emotional maturity that can happen. I mean, think about it, Lisa, when we were at in meetings at J&J and we were in a room and you had the group company chairman who was delivering, and then we saw kind of the nuances and the looks of some of the VPs and what was happening there. You're picking that up. It's hard to pick that up when you're not in the office, when you're not present. And I'm wondering if when you think about the lack of connectivity that's happening in our world, and particularly our country right now, that isn't a part of what the reason is.
Hmm.
So, do you have to be in the office 5 days a week? Maybe it's not 5 days a week, but the storming Norman that you were talking about, absolutely. Bringing people together. We used to do the lunch and learns, remember?
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
bring people from other teams because you wanted to work on innovation. How can companies work on innovation without people being together?
I mean, I also agree and miss very much being in the office with a team because we talked about energy and I feed off the energy of other people too. I like being with other people and bouncing ideas off of them. And I don't mind being alone, but I have a harder time generating that energy if I'm all by myself. And that can be, young people who are just starting out in their careers, and that can be senior people from whom I can learn. And actually, I can learn from the young people too. So, and everything in between. What
Listen, I'm having such a better morning right now because you and I are together. Other than that, I was just like doing studying or I was reading, right? Like this is energizing.
It is, I agree. You've worked at a lot of different places with different cultures, and in your work consulting and as a coach, you've seen lots of cultures. How do people know they're in the right culture? And where would you tell somebody just out of school or early in their career they should start?
Right. Ooh, that's a great question. How do you know you're in the right culture? So there's this idea that you have your body and you have your mind, right? And certain people tend to be more intuitive, it's the body, other people tend to be more logical. I think the greatest leaders are able to use both and tap into both. I think if you're energized, you get up in the morning and you are energized to go to work, you're in the right place. And listen, you're not going to feel energized all the time. But if you generally like the place, you like the people, you're in the right place. Um, I think if you're starting out, first of all, doing a human design would be fantastic for any leader, anyone starting or older, because I think it's going to give you information that you can use of the self-discovery. But if you're new, I think it's about asking. I get curious. I'm not sure I have the answer, but I get curious. What excites you? What do you like to do? What don't you like to do? Uh, do you like to be surrounded by people? Where do you get your energy? And then it's about identifying, okay, what's going to be best for you. I am biased because I went to a large company when I started my career. I thought there was greatness in that because I was able to see things, what I liked and what I didn't like. But that may not be. Some people are just more entrepreneurial and they want to start their own companies.
Mhm.
So if they want to do that, that's great. But I get very clear, what is your goal? I put together your own strategic plan. What's your goal? Where do you want to be 5 years from now? Right? Because I think that's always important. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now? Who are the people you're around you want to be surrounded by? What income do you want to make? Right? There's a list of questions, and I think that can help then identify where you should go.
You know, I am, as you know, at this pivot point in my life, and I am debating starting a new company. And I just got some market research results that say that I have a good idea. So
Great.
that's very exciting. But I thought if I were going to start this company, I only want it to be with people that I love working with
Right.
and that I can learn from. And so I started contacting those friends of mine who are in totally other walks of life to
Right.
see who would be interested in doing it. It's tough because we're all close to retirement age and don't want to give up the security of, the jobs that we have. So I have to think about if I'm going to do this and if I want to be surrounded by old friends whom I've seen do great work, how do I make it appealing for them to come?
I think, well, first of all, congratulations. You're a
Thank you.
serial entrepreneur and you always have been. And I think that's your greatest gift because you talk about my energy. Your energy is always optimistic. You're always able to see the good and how do we pivot? How do we do this? So I'm thrilled. I'm really thrilled for you. And I'd like to be a part of that. So I'm just
Well, you'll be getting the call.
doing So I think the way to do that, it's what's very interesting is that we have like the beginning years, we have the middle years, and then we have the end years. I think in our society right now, oh, retirement, people want to retire. I never want to retire. Like, I'm not going on the pink flamingo. Like, that is, I have too much wisdom to give the world. We have voice, Lisa. We want to help people. I know in one of your questions is what motivates, I think me, what motivates, it's be of service of. How can you make our world a little better? And I think if you're trying to give like inspiring people to come join you, I think that's the way to do it.
Mm,
What is your legacy now? What's
yeah.
your legacy? And if people want to stay safe, they're going to stay safe. There's nothing, yeah, I don't think there's a way of convincing. But if you give them a reason, that inspiration, that's your genius, that's your superpower. Bring them along on your journey.
Well, that's good advice. I think that being of service is really important to me. And the business idea you also know a little bit about, but it has to do with caring for aging parents um, with a software platform that allows you to handle their finances with them and then eventually for them. And
Right.
I know both you and I have struggled through being the daughter of parents who had various medical healthcare and honestly dementia in my family
That's
problem.
fine.
And it's tough. And as in the past life, I wanted to make space for women who were dealing with children
Right.
and create part-time flexible jobs so that they could be focused on their kids. And I know you have two, I have three. Now I feel it's essential for me to create jobs for people who want to take good care of their parents and who want to have no choice in many cases. But also, I think back about how lucky I was that even though I fought with my mom a lot, I got to spend extra time with her. So how
Yeah.
do I create this service that enables a positive interaction between a son or a daughter and their parent and allows them to spend quality time together for however long they have? And oh, by the way, that'll be us in 20 years or
Yes,
less. Yeah.
exactly. So I just want to share something with you too. As you know, my mother had passed in March, and today's
Wow.
her birthday. Today's her
Mm.
birthday. So I think it's very appropriate that you and I are having this conversation to honor her and to honor your mother, Arlene. Um, all right, how do we have the conversation? I think it's about roles switch, right? Like we're not just the child anymore. We could be the parent, and the parent becomes the child. And so again, it gets at a lot of emotional intelligence and self-awareness of how much do you push the parent and how much not, and can you just show up with curiosity and take like we have that baggage. There's no way we don't have the baggage. We have the baggage of how we grew up, any siblings we have, anything. And it's about getting to the higher level of energy. We've talked about frequency of what's the North Star? What is our North Star? Take as good care of our parents as we can for as
Mhm.
long as they're here. If that's the North Star, that's going to sprinkle down the conversations we have, looking at honestly at finances, like whatever they are. But it's a big gap in the market right now, as you well know.
I wish I would have had this conversation with you 5, 7 years ago and not now, because I think for those who are facing into the challenge of caring with their parents and all the truly the challenges that that brings, thinking about maybe putting a strategic plan together and what is the North Star collaboratively with
Yes.
your mom or dad if you can, or with your siblings if you can. That would have been a really smart thing to do that I did not think to do. So
Guess what?
there's
I
a
didn't think
coaching opportunity too.
there is. And I will tell you, I didn't think about that either. I'm not sure. I think this has come through lived experience, right? Like now we know as we're able to do that. The one thing I will say, anyone that's listening here, really important to get siblings on the same page. From a personal basis, it took my sisters and I a little bit to get on the same page. And that could be part of the process. It was for us. But if you can get on the same page, it's just easier to then move forward. And
Yeah.
I think identifying that North Star is probably the first, like get everybody on the same page with that, and then you can move forward.
Well, I even like the idea of applying some of those human design principles because I have a brother and a sister. My sister's on the West Coast. I'm on the East Coast. My parents are on the East Coast, and there were things she could do
Right.
from afar and things she couldn't do. And a brother who was, I mean, we had fortunately, and a sister-in-law who was incredible. We were aligned on the North Star, but not on roles and responsibilities. And that too would have been important to think about where are our strengths? What are we capable of doing? What do we want to do? And
Exactly. Well, that's the bingo. And think about it. That's what we do in high performing teams. Identify,
yeah,
have clarified roles and responsibilities. Who's going to be doing what? What do you like to do? What don't you like to do? What can you hand off? Right?
yeah. Yeah. I mean, so not for today, but once we talk about the business there, now I feel like there's this whole emotional aspect. It's not just a financial of a collaborative session with the family members, almost facilitated by somebody from the organization before you start the technical
Yeah,
piece.
I absolutely agree with that because this tends to be emotional. These are emotional discussions, and it has to begin there.
I I am I've already taken more time than I thought that I would, and I have so many more questions, but I'm going to skip to what advice would you give to young leaders trying to be their best? What specifically for women, but for, future leaders in general, what advice would you give them?
So the most important advice I would give anyone right now is to be authentic. And how do you be authentic? Because that word is really like used. Like you could say, Wendy, like seriously, that's the word you're using. But there is the authenticity comes from really recognizing who you are as an individual, as a leader. What is it that you're really good at? And when you're putting on that mask, why are you putting on a mask? Really recognize when you're not feeling comfortable in your skin. And to do that, you need to slow down. So many people are on this hamster wheel, Lisa. They go from work taking care of kids, taking care of elderly parents, in relationships. Sometimes it's about slowing down, because what I'm finding, especially in these middle years, as I'm talking to women and some good men too, they're high performing, they're high achieving, but they're not feeling great about where they are. And so the opportunity, if you're not feeling great about where you are, it's about stepping back and really listening, trying to get to listening to what you want.
I think a lot of people would say, I don't know. I don't know what I want. How do I know what I want and what I'm good at?
Hmm. Well, that's when you go in, you do something like human design,
Mhm.
hire a coach, because a lot of people will say, I don't know. Like, again, you've gotten on this path and you're doing it. What I would do is, and if you can't do that, then I would get really curious and go into your origin story. How did you get to where you are? And then figure out what you're good at, what you like to do, what you don't like to do. But that's when you want to shed, right? You want to get to your own truth. And I do think that's where a coach can really help, a good coach.
And when you say origin story, you can be 22 years old and you still have an origin story. You can be 62 years old and have an origin story. It's just
Absolutely.
okay. Um, Switching gears a bit, are there any books or podcast recommendations that you would want to share with the folks who are listening or watching our podcast, things you think they should watch or hear?
So, well, I always love Brene Brown. I
Mhm,
love Brene Brown's work, and I do love Simon Sinek's work. Uh,
mhm.
I believe that they are great leaders in what they are doing. Julie Ciardi is the woman that I've been learning human design from, and she has a great podcast as well. Um,
Okay, I'll put that, I'll super that.
okay.
And what if people want to find you to help
Oh, yeah.
them? Where should they go?
They should go to wendyvanbesen.com out there.
And I will super that as well, but spell your last name for
Sure.
everybody.
V is in Victor, A is in Apple, N is in Nancy, B is in boy, E is in Edward, S is in Sam, I, E, N is in Nancy.
Perfect. So I'll put that up as well.
Thank you,
Um,
Lisa.
is there anything, Wendy, that I didn't ask you that I should have?
No, I thought this was beautiful. I think it gets at where we are as leaders, as women in these middle years. And the opportunity is, what do we want to do next? Because there's next. I'm not ready to be done. So you're not ready to be done. We have too much to provide and live. And so I'm like, bring it.
That's an interesting way to talk about it too. There's a next.
Yeah.
And I love that idea. And you made me feel like it might be easier to figure out what that next is than I thought. And so I'll close today, as I do with every podcast, in the immortal words of my mom, Arlene Barnett. You don't have to know what you're going to be when you grow up, just what you're going to do next. So thank you, Wendy, for being here today.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. I just got the chills. That means your mom's with us.